Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Well, today I want to cover kind of a wide variety of things, but they're all connected, I believe. I'll mention the silver stuff that's going on and a little bit of the markets, but also just all the stuff that's been happening over the last year leading up to the Great Reset. But really why? Because we're trying to answer the question, when will the apocalypse happen? And the answer that I have for that question, well, some of you may agree and some of you may not, but kind of stay tuned to hear what I have to say about that. In talking about the apocalypse, SHTF, just a bad situation. I mean, that's where we've been already, and it appears that's where we're headed, into a little dark and gloominess, I guess, for a while, which, as sad as it sounds, most of life's existence is a cycle, so I don't think it's too horrible that we're in that cycle again, but what we have to do is to prepare for that. And one way you can do that is through your food. Of course, you need to be stocking up on all kinds of foods, and we mention that from time to time on this channel, but a good thing to also stock up on is long-term freeze-dried food. This is the kind of stuff that's going to last 30 years plus. And it's really simple to prepare it. Everything's kind of all put together, and you just add some hot water, and boom, you've got something to eat. So I've teamed up and partnered with a company called My Patriot Supply, and they offer some of the best quality and the best price per calorie food on the market. There'll be a link down in the description below to where you can find some really good products for a great price. Several of the listeners on here use them and have purchased from them, as well as my family, and so far everyone has given a really good review and really loves the products that they get from them. So when will the apocalypse happen? I have two answers to that question. The first answer is it's already happened. We're living in it. And the second one is well, we don't really know, but we have a kind of a good idea, at least my opinion is. And so let me back up to say that. I think the apocalypse, and I don't mean the ending of all humanity, but I'll get to my definition of what the apocalypse is here in a minute. I believe a series of events that's already kind of set it into motion has happened over the last couple of years, but you could even go back into the 60s and the 70s and start seeing this chain of events that are happening naturally and orchestrated to kind of lead us up to a point. And this is all my theory, so bear with me on that. A lot of people are kind of wondering, all these things that are happening, and some of it certainly seems connected, but why? Why now? What is the point of doing this now? Many of you have heard of like Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030, and of course the Great Reset that's happening, that we're living in. And you're wondering, well, why? Why is this happening? There is a theory, and I'm going to just call it that, even though there's a lot of scientific evidence to kind of connect it and make it a little bit more than a theory. And it's something that I have been researching and learning about over the last few years. And I was really excited not that long ago to find a YouTube channel with a guy that's talking about the things that I've been studying and kind of following and thinking in the same line of thought that I think. And he's much more knowledgeable than I am and just explains it a lot better. So I am going to refer you to his channel. There'll be a link in the description below. And the channel is called Adapt 2030. And the guy is really knowledgeable. And basically the idea is that the Earth, the Sun, and the planets, they all are in cycles. And that's just the way that they were created to be. And everything is in these cycles. And every so often, the Sun goes through different cycles, and the Earth goes through cycles, and the planetary alignments go through cycles. But then every so often, throughout history, all these kind of cycles, these peaks, kind of all come together. And if you look at the science, which there is a lot of science, NASA and NOAA and several other agencies has done a lot of scientific research going back really thousands of years. They seem to believe that in about 3 or 4 years, we will be at one of those peaks in that cycle. And it's going to be a solar peak, a planetary alignment. And if you look at it all together, there's a lot of evidence to believe that while it won't be like a apocalyptic, the earth is crashing in a ball of flames, but it will most likely upset the environment on the planet is the belief. And there's a lot of evidence going back throughout history that when these happen, and yes, I'm speaking of the grand solar minimum, that's one of them, but there's also a planetary alignment that just so happens to be happening during this grand solar minimum that we're in. And what we see is when these certain alignments happen, and these events, these cycles happen, they can affect the environment in a way that it drastically can affect the growing seasons. It can affect the ability to grow and produce food. It can affect the climate so much so that people in certain areas may have to move because the weather becomes extreme one way or the other. So there's a lot of movement of populations, and throughout history, you can pinpoint when these things happen are when certain civilizations either fell or people made drastic movements into a different region because where they were living, they couldn't grow food anymore, or all the animals they hunted moved, or the weather became too extreme for them to tolerate it. And so we've seen that throughout history. And this, you can do the research. Again, I'm a real novice on this. I understand it, but being able to eloquently turn around and teach it to you is I'm not able to. So I encourage you to do the research. And this YouTube channel guy that I'm leaving a link to, he's much better at it and can help you start your journey of researching this if you've never heard of these things. And one of the things that he talks about, and one of the things that happens, is that again, can create such a significant effect on this planet that, well, it can cause a disturbance to civilizations, that they're not able to function properly because people start to become hungry, or people have to move out of the region. And you can look at the different dynasties in China. When they fell was when these things happened. Well, all this leading up to is planned according to the scientific data to peak out in the end of 2024 is what is believed between the grand solar minimum and the planetary alignment. The belief is that it's going to create some havoc in the sense that it's going to make it difficult to grow food in a lot of places. So my belief is that all the things that we're leading up to, all these things that's happened over the last few years, and especially the last 12 months, that it seems like so much of this stuff is being orchestrated, not just by our government, but by global governance. And why they're trying to push all these reset agenda through. Why is it all of a sudden it's this, they're in a dire need to get these things put into place. I believe they're doing all this to get everything ready for this, potential change in climate change and planetary change and solar change that we're going to be a cycle that we're going to be going into in the next 3 years. If you look at how the lockdowns in the YouTube channel that I've mentioned, he mentions that also. Look at the lockdowns. Think of how it would be if there were some type of global environmental change to where certain areas were no longer livable, but other areas were fine. And if masses of amounts of people, hundreds of millions, maybe even billions, decided to migrate to new areas just to survive, that would create an extreme strain on most cultures. Society, I don't know if they could sustain that that kind of strain. Let's say if North Africa finally, became the only place on Earth that was fertile and everyone started moving there to survive. Think of what kind of devastation that would have on the Earth's governments. So, what's the plan? Lock everyone down to keep everyone from moving, close borders off. We're seeing that all across Europe. We're seeing that all over the planet, where countries are no longer allowing migration or entrance or exit from different nations because of the health crisis, right? Um, we're seeing a lot of change in food laws. We're seeing a lot of change in agriculture. We're seeing a lot of change in the monetary system. And look at what silver is doing right now. Of course, the stock market's been all kind of crazy. Some stocks have gone from being nearly worthless to being extremely valuable over a matter of days. And of course, there's reasons for that. We've discussed that in the past. But look at silver right now. And of course, silver, I believe the price and the volatility right now, I know that may not be the correct word, but the fact that it's all of a sudden become really popular, I believe that's orchestrated, and not just by the Reddit crowd, let's call it that. I believe that it's orchestrated on other levels too. I find it very hard to believe that in a matter of days, virtually all of the silver supplies by these big online companies that sell silver is all dried up. And that's the case, basically. If you want to purchase silver online right now, you pretty much can't. Everyone says they've sold out since Friday. And I'm sure there's been a lot of purchases since Friday, but that's a lot of silver that's bought in the last few days. And so I'm sure that's all orchestrated also. So the point is, in this video, and I know this is something that I haven't really discussed much on this channel before, I'll probably be continuing this discussion over on my Patreon page. But you may think I'm crazy, but I truly believe that more and more so, especially as we see things happen and we see things, the changes, and you start to wonder, well, why do they do that? Like, why are they wanting to push this issue? And then you step back and say, it's to keep, us in place, or to keep exert control over a certain area so that it will be in the right position where they want it once 2024 gets here. And that seems to be the year that a lot of scientists believe that we will be experiencing a lot of havoc and a lot of global change. We could see drastic weather change during that year and even afterwards. And we're already starting to see that. I mean, there's been an increased amount of rain this year, and increased amount of rain clouds or just cloud cover over the planet, which is typical going into this cycle. Where does that leave us? And is that what we can say when the apocalypse is going to happen? I don't necessarily think so. Like I said, I believe it's already happening. I believe that we are currently living in an SHTF. And I think our governments, because of the science that we have, because of the technology that we have, governments are much more able to plan ahead and orchestrate a SHTF than they would have been hundreds or thousands of years ago in past events similar to this. So I believe what we are seeing here is they're trying to set up the chessboard. They see what's coming. They have the scientists. They have the technology. And I think that they see the things that are happening. And they are setting up the chessboard so that it benefits them, because they don't want people to go into maybe a state of anarchy to where their power no longer exists because no one recognizes them, or that they also fall victim to all of the chaos that happens and basically lose food themselves or become hungry themselves. So I think that's what we are seeing. And as crazy as it sounds, looking back over the past year, I don't think it sounds quite as crazy as it may once have. So where that puts you and I is in a place that we are able to become more prepared for that. There's so many people on this planet today especially here in the United States, that are so heavily dependent upon the system. They still, to this day, believe that regardless of how bad it gets, the government and the infrastructure and systems in place will protect them and will take care of them. And you and I know that that is not always the case, and it's certainly not the place to put all your faith in. So I think that what we need to be doing, like I've said all along, is continually to prepare. You know, and also know that if in fact this does happen in, say, 3 to 4 years, it's not going to be good up until that point and then chaotic. We're seeing a slow progression of change, this reset that is taking place all around us: political reset, technological reset, agricultural reset, societal reset. We're seeing it happen. We're seeing changes and things that just a few years ago, most people would have said, oh, that's nuts. The government wouldn't do that. The people wouldn't go for that. And yet it's happening right now before our eyes. And I believe that it's all due to a plan that's been put in place probably very long ago, because some scientists and government people at a high level saw this coming. And here we are today. So I think we should plan that things will progressively get worse. We already knew that. The Great Reset will progressively advance. We already knew that. So that's nothing new. But I think that we do at least have a something to look at as a goal, that we need to get ourselves ready by this point. And certainly, if you can, before that point. Again, you may not agree with this. You may think I'm crazy. And that's okay. You wouldn't be the first person. But I would encourage you to do the research. And like I said, again, the good place to start is with the YouTube channel Adapt 2030. Link will be in the description. If you start there, and the reason why I'm putting him on there is because, like I said, I've done this research in multiple different areas over the last 18 to 24 months, and then I stumbled upon this channel, and he puts it together so well, and he does leave references to all of his sources. So it's easy for you to start there and kind of expand into that, to the research, to see that there is something there. There is something there with the solar cycle, with the grand solar minimum, the planetary cycle, and the planetary alignments that affect the gravitational pull of the planets depending on where they're at, and to affect the solar cycle. So if you put it all together, this is why in the next 3 years, a lot of people believe that we could be in for kind of a rough ride on this planet. And myself and others also believe that that is why we are seeing the things happen all over this planet, these drastic, rapid changes in policy. All right, folks, please. Don't think that I'm too crazy. I'm telling you, once you start looking at the data, I feel it's very difficult to continue to say that this is just quackery. All right, folks, thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.